Hey everyone, it's Matt from Zenshop, and today I've got an awesome episode because I'm joined today with my best buddy Adrian, and
Hello.
we get. Hey Adrian, cool, nice to have you with us. I'm going to introduce Adrian and all the awesome stuff he's working on, and we're going to talk about some future things about Zenshop, and also the recent launch experience and how we're onboarding new users, getting awesome feedback from customers, and the potential direction of Zenshop. I'm really happy to have my best buddy Adrian on the show today. He's been a good friend of mine for many years, since university time, pretty much, and he's also been a big supporter of Zenshop since the very beginning. I just want to talk about Adrian. Do you want to just introduce yourself a little bit? What?
Yeah, sure. So I've known Matt since university. We studied together late at night in the lab, working on like hard computer science problems as assignments. And since I graduated, I've been working on like computer security for probably about 10 years now, and been working at different levels of the software stack, trying to introduce new change in terms of security mechanisms and features. And I'm really excited to be working with Matt on the security of zenshop. As zenshop is like getting started and is starting to build like a design that scales to many users. And I'm also very interested in like machine learning. I guess who isn't interested in machine learning? But it's like a real opportunity there for zenshop. So that's where I come in.
Oh, it's amazing, Adrian. You've been so helpful already. Yeah, the security stuff was really interesting. I thought because I think when we went through the stack of Zenshop, and we did that diagram where we like listed all the inputs and outputs. Really fascinating to see how the security process works with evaluating risk for a system like Zenshop. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you did there?
Yeah, well, I mean, every like secure design starts with a threat model. So understanding what are the things that you care about the most, and listing all the things that you can do to protect data between important like components like databases, web servers, and so on. And then once you have like this full picture, you can make some very like intelligent decisions about which parts you want to protect more and which parts are less. Basically, you can focus like you're always going to have technical debt with security because security is an evolving scenario. But you want to make sure that all the highly risky stuff is taken care of early. And so with Zenshop, we're like making sure that we stay on top of security because I mean, there's it's often that you open the newspaper or the your favorite news website and you see that there's been some kind of data breach or hack, and basically we don't want to be that. We don't want to be on the front page of a newspaper.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I guess my interesting, I guess my take on Zenshop is kind of changed since the very early days. So before Zenshop was like a lot more modularized, and there were lots of services, and now um, we've been converging more towards a monolithic design where a lot of the pieces are kind of bundled together, which actually improves security in quite a lot of ways because you don't have to worry about all these outsourced components in different places. So maybe you should talk a bit about that.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, that was really interesting. And yeah, moving towards a sort of like monolithic design with the Rails backend. It wasn't intentional with that side effect, but it's a happy coincidence. I do find it makes reasoning the code base a lot easier. And having everything more monolithic and centralized. Um, but there are like inputs and outputs to third-party services, which I guess where the weaknesses potentially could be. But then having them, understood and reasoned is the key benefit of doing a review, like a security review. Um,
So
and
to remind us all, like, why was it a good idea to move to the Ruby on Rails like monolithic stack?
So I think the key benefit of the Ruby on Rails stack was that Ruby on Rails gives you like a prescribed way of building a web application. So it's like on Rails as a the term, or batteries included.
Hmm.
Everything is kind of there for me to create the application. Whereas I felt like with the previous stack, and it's nothing particularly about Golang. It's more about the stack creation method, where I'm just assembling things bit by bit, all by myself. And I think that's harder for web developers because they have to go through the stack, and then it might be fine tuned for the use case, but it's also probably easier to make mistakes, which could transpire to be security mistakes as well. Whereas I think Rails has a way of working, and as long as you fit within that way of working, it's all good. So I'm really enjoying the Ruby on Rails backend.
Didn't Ruby on Rails like go out of fad 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think it did. And I
Why
think
do
the
you think
first
that
time,
happened?
I think Ruby on Rails is still used widely, and also you can see that there are big, software companies that use it to this day. Obviously Shopify, the main thing that we integrate with zenshop is a Ruby on Rails backend. GitHub, I think, still uses Ruby in some ways. I know they certainly started on Ruby. Planet Scale, the database that we use, is also Ruby on Rails, which was really interesting. I didn't know that until much later. So even though it's sort of fallen out of fashion, it's still very much with us, and I think for good reasons. So I'm confident that the Ruby backend is going to be very scalable and a good choice for ZenShop. And the areas where maybe Ruby as a language might be difficult to scale, we can move those components to the appropriate language or software. So yeah, um, but this is actually an interesting pivot point here in the conversation, because I mean, you're doing some very early sort of investigation work on doing a separate service for ZenShop, which would be like an AI integration where we could basically provide intelligence to ZenShop users, and maybe even do some automatic responses and sentiment analysis. And I've kind of left that for you to architect and implement yourself, because ZenShop will basically call into your services. So I was just wondering, if could you talk about this and explain anything that you want to talk about with that? It's really interesting.
Certainly. So I'm still like fairly new to machine learning, and I mean I have a little bit of experience like from university courses some many years ago before deep learning was a thing. But the I really wanted to be a bit more hands-on and rather than look at the theoretical side. I'm actually not even that interested in deep learning right now. Just trying to make sure that basic machine learning, seeing how that works, what are the data sets that you need, what's the training time for these things. A lot of these very practical considerations when trying to stand up a web service. So at the moment, I'm just kind of building a very minimal, viable kind of service that runs in the cloud. And I'm using as many like free tiers from different providers as possible, just to like really get something together that like is like consistent and whole. And at the moment, it is, you could think of it like as like GitHub, but for machine learning. So
Mm.
that's where I started from, and I think over time it's going to be like more and more specialized for particular markets that want to use machine learning but don't have a team of smart engineers to take it on, or at least they don't have the bandwidth. So the idea is you log in, you get an API key, and then you can use that API key for different endpoints. So those endpoints can include sentiment analysis, like you said. Some people find that useful. Um, Another one is classification, where you might want to have certain pieces of data have particular tags, like placed on them intelligently. And so you need a way of like training the system to recognize certain pieces of text or data as associated to a particular kind of tag or class. And those two are the ones that I've been working on because they're different enough that it requires me to think about the API more deeply, and then also being able to stand those up behind a web service uh, takes a bit of time and engineering, and you need to worry about authentication, billing, and so on. And I'm still at the point where I've got one or two of these things end to end together, but I still need to work more on the multi-tenancy aspect, which is really difficult with this sort of stuff. Mainly
Mm.
because the sheer quantities of data that you need to train machine learning models with is is obviously very bandwidth intensive and potentially very storage intensive. So having having ways to manage those costs is extremely important for a service like this.
Oh, that's really interesting, Adrian. Yeah, you touched on the multi-tenancy aspect, and this is also something within ZenShop itself. I've had challenges with as well, because ZenShop is a multi-tenant system. It uses um, an integration with Shopify to pull in data for that store. And then it's got conversations and messages and users within a store, which is a tenant. Um, but of course, when we integrate ZenShop with the AI stuff, it's also got to be multi-tenanted, hasn't it? So the AI responses, the categorization, and the learning aspects to it need to learn specifically for that store because each store is going to be different. So yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I've struggled already with scaling ZenShop for users because the amount of data that we pull in is quite a lot, and it's only going to be growing. And then also integrating it with different cloud services is a challenge, but it's really fun. I mean, this is like what the what I suppose really what the key benefit of ZenShop is going to be is it's seems to be going more in the direction of an email based system, which can send and automate a lot of emails for the support staff. So, like, one of the conversations I was having with a fairly large store, which is trialing ZenShop right now, is we needed to do bulk replies, and it would automate a workflow for those replies. So it could be like parcel tracking and things like that. Um, but I'm really, really curious in future how we could do these bulk replies and use as much AI and machine learning as possible, and like learn from the data that we get from our users and customers, because I think we'll feed in the training data per store to the AI stuff.
So what's like a common use case for bulk reply? Is it like they got 80% of their users are trying to do the same thing, so they have a bulk reply for that, or how does it work?
Yeah, exactly. It seems like, from what I understand, is that it's quite common to have like essentially a workflow for different things, and you might have like three or four customers essentially saying the same question to you. So you just select those tickets, select a workflow, and then run the workflow for those users, and it will dispatch the message to those users. So it just saves you time um, individually replying to one user with the same message. You can just select multiple users.
Yeah,
I
it would be
think
definitely awesome for zenshop to be able to like let users create their own workflows and just like apply them wherever it makes sense for them.
I mean that is actually the feature I'm working on this minute, is like essentially creating your own workflow. Yeah, we prioritize features now, really depending on the feedback from customers. And this was the feedback that we got: is we want to be able to create workflows um, and run these automations. So yes, I'm really excited. We're also like improving the speed that we ingest data. So I'm doing some work on the background tasks to integrate faster with Shopify. So that's also a big technical challenge. Um, but the workflow stuff is actually relatively easy to build, I think. So I think it probably be dropping sometime next week or the week after. We'll have that feature ready to go. Yeah.
And how are the first users of zenshop doing?
So still early days, but they seem to be happy. So the paying users currently are um, uh, users that were previously using Zen queries, and they're very familiar with Zen queries. They've been using it for a while. They've got their support staff working well with the system. So now we're just sort of offloading them from Zen queries and moving them onto zenshop. And zenshop kind of works very similarly to Zen queries, really. It's just that the buttons are a little bit moved around, the interface is a little bit different, but essentially, like, it should be very similar to them. Um, but of course, like, because it's a new system and like it hasn't been well used yet, I'm still finding little edge cases and little bugs, little like gotchas which I need to fix and patch up. But we were working really closely with these users to make sure that everything is smooth for them and doing what they need to be done. And also now we can finally start introducing new features. So that's why the bulk reply stuff is coming in quickly. There's also like recently some new features for the order tracking. So you can add your in your templated reply, you can add like the order number, the line items, the tracking URL. So that was really useful for people obviously sending replies to customers about the tracking of orders.
And I guess over time you're going to like expand like the number of tags that people can use to populate these templates with the relevant pieces of data.
Yes, exactly. I think the templating syntax is evolving always, and I want it to be very specific to e-commerce and customer support. And the more information that we can automate, the better. Because I mean, that's really the whole benefit of ZenShop. I think is like making it super easy to automate your bulk replies to your customers, because um, it's a very similar workflow probably most of the time, and you want to do it as quickly as possible without too much of a headache.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Well, congratulations on your first paying customers. That must be really great for a Zen shop right now.
Yeah, oh man, Adrian, I was so happy. I was over the moon because like getting first customers is a big thing. Like it kind of helps you in your own mind just know that you're going in the right direction with the product. And it's like it doesn't mean that ZenShop is an overnight success. I think we need to still build functionality and also do marketing. I'm really excited about the unicorn, by the way. So I'm looking forward to Jesse's work on this awesome unicorn that we're making. Um, uh, but I think now it's really about listening to our users, building functionality that differentiates Zenshop from our competitors, and levels it up. So we want to like exceed our competitors actually. And I think there's loads of interesting ways that we can do this. Um, so yeah, uh, I mean, you're going to hear more and more about it as we go on. But having those first paying customers and also this larger store now, which is giving us really excellent feedback, is very helpful.
I think now more than ever, it's about getting product fit and really understanding those workflows that your customers care about.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like, I mean, like Zen Queries was around for a while, right? But it's all that time I wasn't able to get good feedback to reach product market fit. But it feels very much different now. I think the combination of using LogRocket, building this community that we've done on Discord, and also being more proactive with like reaching out to customers or users and following their journey on the website is I can definitely see a huge like game changing kind of pivot here in terms of the speed that we get feedback to delivering features and now retaining customers. So yeah, I think the next 6 months are going to be quite interesting to see uh, what goes next for zenshop with this.
Yeah, I don't
And
think there's like a silver bullet for this. You really have to um, try all the options, all the channels that you can to get feedback because some people will prefer to respond by email. Some people prefer to just kind of experiment with the system for a while until they're like more comfortable with the range of features that it has. And then
yes,
others, well, I guess there are other ways of reaching out to them that we don't know yet.
That's true. I mean, so one thing I'm noticing is there's different types of stores, right? And they all have different expectations. So, so like the smaller stores are easier to onboard with because they're not working at scale. You know, they might have a couple of messages that they need to respond to over the course of the day, but it's not too burdensome for them. They just need a simple thing to reply to messages with in a convenient way. That's what Zenshop I think reasonably does well already. But then when you compare it to like a larger store, which is just constantly got messages coming in, then they're really optimizing their workflow. They're really focused on optimizing the workflow. Um, and I kind of want to build something that scales to both users, even though they're fairly different, really. Um, and that's the trick, I think, with like good user interface design is with zenshop particularly I want the user interface to be like zen, you know what I mean, like it's kind of just really really clear and simple to use. It doesn't over engineer things, and it scales from a small store to a big store.
Well, I mean, from what I understand about like small and medium sized businesses, is that they don't really have the time or the money to like train people to use tools. So like anything you can do to like reduce like the cognitive overhead or cognitive barrier to using these tools is probably a massive win.
That's true. Yeah, that's a big point actually. Because I mean, even the smallest store, like absolute smallest store, just needs to learn the system. Because like you can't just start with something like ZenShop and immediately understand how to use it. Um, and the same is true for a big store, right? So there is a cognitive load, and it's quite high actually. Like, and I did notice that like that's why transitioning users from zen queries, for example, to zenshop was actually a real challenge, because there's just a lot of resistance to that. I think once you've set up your shop with a system like zenshop, um, you don't want to just move over to another system without good reason for doing that, because it introduces like extra load on your staff.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, you see this in all kinds of IT related systems, security, help desks, anything like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I'm really looking forward to, in a future call. We're going to talk more about how we're doing on the AI stuff, because I think it's got a really bright potential for ZenShop. I don't know if have you spent any time with GPT-3? Because I keep seeing
Hmm.
stuff on Twitter about that, but it looks really interesting. I don't know how feasible it would be to use something like GPT-3 with responding tickets.
So I have played with GPT-3 for text generation, um, closer to the time when GPT-3 came out. So for those who don't know, GPT-3 I think was developed by OpenAI, this kind of nonprofit organization that's trying to advance the state of AI, and they basically don't give away everything for free. They essentially put it behind some kind of server, and they give out select access to people. And I knew somebody who had an API key for that. So they had an invite to join and run stuff on this service. So he gave it to me, and I was able to use it for a bit. And that's I was just playing around with it just to see what it was capable of, and it is very impressive. Um,
Yeah.
the only thing about using it is that um, it's a very large model. I'm not sure if it's I'm not sure if it's downloadable yet. That I can just go and get a copy of it, because I think there were worries that people would take it and abuse it in terrible ways. So
Oh,
I think I need to go and check to see whether they have more public access to it,
yeah.
because it represents a huge amount of investment for them as well. Like it's probably like millions of years worth of compute time generated
Oh,
that model. Um, I haven't thought about integrating it with the AI service, just because we're kind of focusing on fairly trivial problems compared to what OpenAI is trying to do with the very advanced deep learning model. But it is something that we have to pay attention to, because um, as the other as other competitors in the space try and do more, they will go and reach out to those more advanced models. And the challenge with using the advanced models is because you didn't make the model yourself, you don't really know how it works. And so there's an element of liability there, that if something didn't go well, then you wouldn't be able to provide much support for it.
right. I
So,
mean, yeah, I think we both use something like called GitHub CoPilot. I remember you being very enthusiastic about this. Um,
well, there's an
have you?
important point there, because
Yeah.
I have been using GitHub Copilot over the summer. I was lucky to have like fairly early access to it as a beta tester, and while I did enjoy using it when it so basically GitHub Copilot, it sits in your code editor on the side, and what you do is you type a comment in your code, and it will try and generate some code that matches the intention of that comment. So I could write a comment saying uh, function that reads from a file, and it will go and like generate some code that will um, read from a file, which as a developer is great, because I don't want to memorize all that boilerplate that is necessary to read from a file, for example. There's lots more, there are a lot more like complex examples where it's really just about memorizing boilerplate, or going to Stack Overflow and finding somebody who's already done it and
Mm,
seeing if you can incorporate it in your code. But I found that like 2 out of 3 times when using GitHub Copilot, it was like a very helpful suggestion, and 1/3 of the time it was just completely wrong. And so, given that in mind, I thought,
mm,
on the whole, a useful tool. It does get in the way, uh, kind of painfully, when it goes wrong. I think I think if they can improve the rate at which it matches your intent, then that would be great. But right now, because it's now GA, general access, they're starting to charge for it, and as a developer, I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to pay money for that. Not right
yeah.
now.
Fair enough.
Mainly because of that.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I love GitHub Copilot, but have the same sort of feelings. I think it's very useful if you're using different languages that you're not so familiar with. Like for example, let's
Oh,
say I need
absolutely.
yeah. If I need to write a Bash script, for example, I'm not familiar so well with Bash script. I know you are though, so I'll probably ask you. But I could ask GitHub Copilot write me a Bash script to do something, and it'll probably do a better job than I can.
It's
But
great for learning a new language
right,
because I write Go, but I'm still fairly new to Go, and I find that it's like extremely helpful. That said, you got to be very careful with GitHub Copilot because it's been trained on a huge corpus of code, and you don't know if you're a newcomer, you can't you don't have the experience to tell whether the code being generated is actually going to work.
right.
So there's always an element that it will generate codes that you don't quite understand and may actually have some bad side effects. So.
It could do a RM minus RF, and you wouldn't know.
Quite right, yeah.
Oh God. Okay.
So I say it's great for learning a new language, but it's also kind of risky. And I think what's going to be interesting is it's going to be so tempting for like university students to use this kind of technology to
Mm,
like help with their assignments, and professors are going to be probably annoyed because of this.
yeah. I think GitHub Copilot is kind of analogous to where I think we'll end up going with zenshop as well with the GPT-3 or other algorithm. Is we'll like instruct zenshop to create some workflow for us, and then it will like write it for you essentially, like or generate these things maybe, or those replies, it helps you like auto complete the sentence and things. I think it would be very useful.
That's
But
a really good point because, like, you may think as a shop owner that you have like an efficient system or workflow when actually you might have a helpful AI that tells you, well, actually, you could improve your business process by making these small changes, and then you could like switch over almost immediately to that.
yeah, that's so true. um
Very
and it
science
will
fiction.
I, I mean I think that's where I want to get to, like what was it like, it's like the beauty is like it's almost like magic, I suppose. Like you want the product to be like magic, and then um behind the scenes it's all technology, but it seems like magic. um I'm also going to do
Or
some
you want any
interesting.
helpful hints that help you with your customers during a conversation
Yeah.
so that you can make sure that they come back to you.
Well, one of the things I think often that store owners struggle with is like understanding who is the customer. So they come in from all these different sources. It might be Instagram or email, website, but they're using different sort of pseudonyms for their identity. But behind the scenes there's an order placed with a customer detail, and we've got to try and figure out who this person is, where depending on where they contact from. And I really think like machine learning and deep learning, all this like intelligence that we can try and build in, will like pull in data from those sources and try and understand who it is immediately. So it kind of categorizes the user, understands their intent quickly, um, those kinds of things. I think it's possible, but we're gonna have
Yeah,
to
the
keep
business
playing.
world is so messy, right? So anything to help with that is probably like a massive plus for shop owners.
Yeah. Um, well, I think that pretty much covers most of the things, right, Adrian? I could
Yeah,
be wrong, but it was really a pleasure, obviously, to have you join me today, and I'm also really looking forward to doing future calls with you. I mean, we'll talk more about the security stuff and future, and the unicorn logo, which I know Jesse's helping with, and you're obviously her partner. So, um, and also the AI, the platform that you're building is really exciting. So, thank you so much, Adrian.
yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, nice to chat to you.
All right,
Speak to you
everyone.
soon.
Thanks for joining, and see you again soon. Bye.